Hey guys, welcome to the Emergence podcast, a podcast that aims to empower fitness professionals through candid conversations about building sustainable minds, bodies, and businesses. I'm your host, Laura Gunder, ex professional ballet dancer turned classical Pilates instructor based in New York City, sharing my insights from a decades long journey navigating an industry with no set path to success. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hey guys, welcome back to the Emergence podcast. Today I'm joined by Michael Autore, coach, got it right this time, creative and founder of Slim Thick. Originally from Norwalk, Connecticut, Michael's relationship to movement began on the football field. Since then, his training career spanned personal training, leadership, content creation, brand building, and most importantly, internal work. After graduating from Stonehill College in 2012, Michael started coaching at the YMCA and took a detour into sales by 24, was managing a facility in Connecticut. In 2018, he moved to NYC and truly sparked his evolution. He joined Motive New York in 2019 and led their digital pivot during the pandemic and launched Slim Thick in 2021, a bold and joyful driven brand helping people feel more at home in their bodies. The same year, he stepped into an advisory role with Somble, a platform that helps coaches scale their businesses. Now, as he prepares to leave his full time role at Motive, literally this Friday, Michael is stepping into a new season, one of expansion, experimentation, and deepened impact as a coach, creative, and founder. I'm so excited to have you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Me too. Thank you for the opportunity, Laura.
Thank you. So, I kind of like to start with people kind of a little bit more chronologically. So, can you tell me a little bit more about growing up in Connecticut and what sort of your evolution into fitness was?
Of course. Again, thank you for the opportunity, and it's great to be here with you. I grew up in Norwalk, Connecticut, so about an hour train ride from here.
Nice.
And I got into football at the age of 7 or 8. Was always the little guy, couldn't get any bigger, so I turned to the weight room. As of high school, I had a strength coach take me under his wing,
Mm,
really instilled a lot of confidence in me, forced me to make eye contact with people when I'm talking,
yeah.
and that's what started it all. That's when I wanted to. I knew that I wanted to start out as a trainer,
Hmm.
and as I got to college, I didn't really have the foresight to look into exercise science background or anything like that. I just knew that I wanted to be a personal trainer. So took the marketing route, was a dance minor as well, which explains some of my dance videos years later.
I love that.
And yeah, I've now been a coach for 13, 14 years.
Wow, that's so cool. And you started out at the YMCA, so you went to college for sales or
So I
for
went to college. I started out pre med. I wanted to go the physical
pre-med?
therapy
Okay.
route. And I remember pretty quickly learning I was not cut out for all the extra lab
Yeah.
classes along with football. And so I switched to marketing because I just felt like it fit my personality.
Mhm.
And it was a good transition. And within that timeline, took enough dance classes to minor in that as well, which I really have to thank for the confidence I have today. And then as of my junior year of college, I quit the football team and I started interning as a strength coach, and that's really what started it all.
Wow, that's so cool. What an interesting, mix of skill sets, dancing and kind of marketing, it's such a those are such useful tools as
Oh
a
yeah.
coach and in this industry. So
hmm
that's really, really, really cool. And starting at the YMCA, can you tell me a little bit more about that and kind of your beginnings and kind of feelings as you were beginning out
Of
as a
course.
coach?
So when I was in high school, I started working out at a facility in Norwalk, Connecticut,
Mhm.
and I became friends with all the trainers there. I even had the employee pass code. So come college, I knew that that's where I wanted to work when I graduated. And I had interviewed there my senior year. I knew the training manager for the whole corporation. And then they ghosted me around Christmas break. And looking back, I realized I think I was probably too confident in those meetings, knowing that I'd already kind of been in fitness
Mhm.
with one foot in the door for a few years. And so I graduated school and I was like, well, I didn't get the job that I thought I was going to get. And I just started interviewing at different facilities in the area. And I had a friend whose mom worked for the YMCA in Darien, Connecticut. I went there, and fortunately, with the timing of it, they had just finished a $25 million renovation. It was nothing like a YMCA, or at least what I thought a YMCA would look like.
Mhm.
And it was a great opportunity for me. I was the first hire after the new takeover with the fitness director, And I was placed in a cool role where I was working with a bunch of one-on-one clients, but I also got to take on the in-house swim team. So I worked with a
Oh,
lot of high school
interesting.
teams. So I would train 5:30 a.m. every single morning, Monday through Friday, with all of the dads and husbands. As of 9 a.m., I would train the moms, and 3 p.m., I'd have the kids. So
Wow, that's
I
a
did
lot.
that for a few years, and I'll be honest, that whole time I really wasn't proud of being a personal trainer. I had always put all this pressure on myself, and I know my family provided this great education for me, and it just seemed like, "Oh, you're just a personal trainer."
Interesting. Mhm.
So, being young and naive and impressionable as well, a lot of opportunities had come up, and I had an opportunity to become a sales or account executive for a chemical distributor, and decided to take that and sold raw materials to manufacturing plants. Did that for about a year and a half. Took everything I could from that experience, and then went back into training, and that's when I got my first management position.
Okay, so your management position was as a trainer, like,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I was a training director at a facility in Greenwich, Connecticut.
Okay, and then from the YMCA, then you completely stopped training and then did your, like, corporate job
A
full
little
time?
bit. I would train clients at like 5:36 a.m. I would then
Okay,
go do sales calls all day, train some people at night. So I've always been one of those people that just works a little bit too much.
that's a
And
crazy yeah,
yeah, I mean, at the time I had all the energy in the world, so why not take it all in? But then it got to a point where I was like, all right, how do I leverage all this experience and get back into fitness?
okay.
And that's how I was hired as a manager then.
And why do you think that you have this, like, internal drive to constantly be busy? Because I feel like right now in fitness, I'm really curious right now and interested in how there's, like, this weird balance between hustle and, like, it is very important to be successful,
Mhm.
but at a certain point, I feel like there's a tipping point where you can go almost too far, and then it's actually doing you a disservice. So, have did you deal with that while sort of balancing both roles?
Early on, no.
Mhm.
Early on, I felt like I could just do sessions all day and
Yeah,
take on more responsibilities. But that was also reflective of the time where there was no opportunity to make money online like there is now.
right.
So the only way I knew to make money was to do more sessions. And I was able to do that for a good bit, but none of my friends were in fitness. So I'd be going out every night in my mid 20s.
Wow.
And actually, when I moved to the city, I still did that. And I realized at the time it was one of three things had to give: it was either crappy sleep, no drinking, or no working out. So for most of my 20s, I didn't really work out, to be honest. So
Yeah.
fortunately, I kind of leaned on all the hard work I did in high school and college and could burn through sessions all day, still go out at night and make all these connections and try to build what I was building at the time. And it was when I moved to the city and I got north of, of 30 years old that I realized that wasn't the best way to prioritize myself, and so my sleep became more important, my workouts became more
Yeah.
important, the partying kind of took a back seat, and I'll be honest, I still do a ton of work, and that's that's a learned behavior from my family for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good to be transparent because sometimes I feel like people just are like, yeah, just relax, like go with the flow, like things will just happen. But that's not really, to be quite honest, I don't think that is the honest way of looking at business and people who are successful from who have been talking to and people I know, there is a lot of work and behind the scenes that
Yeah,
needs to be exposed. It's not just like people are sitting there manifesting these things. Like
you
there's a
gotta
lot of
put the time in.
action so, from kind of being in Connecticut, what was kind of the impetus to move to NYC? Because, the fitness scene in New York City, anything in New York City, you're working with the best of the best. The caliber is at another level, and you're also required to work and kind of rise to that caliber in order just to survive here.
Mhm.
So, what kind of was behind that big move?
I felt like I at the time, I felt like I couldn't do much more in Connecticut from a financial standpoint.
Hmm.
My network had grown, I was doing as many sessions as I could, I was kinda tapped out from that standpoint. So I always felt like maybe New York was the next progression. I really didn't like New York as a little kid. My brother went to undergrad here. I used to come
Okay,
visit all the time when I was younger. Never pictured living here. And then just to be transparent about it, I went through a bad breakup, and that's what gave me the perspective to be like, you know what, I think this is time to move to New York. So in March of 2018, I broke my lease, quit my job, and moved to Astoria and lived on my brother's couch for a year and just started all over again.
that's amazing. Honestly, I I love a bad breakup because I really feel like
It helps.
that it's like the best springboard
Oh, yeah.
to discovery. I've been there
But it's
multiple
funny
times.
because I went from having a two-bedroom, 2 full bath, washer and dryer in Stamford, Connecticut,
Yeah.
in a cushy spot with what I was doing. Like, I really didn't have to work that much at the time for what I was making. And then I moved to my brother's, studio in Astoria. And I remember right away, I'm like, "Why do you have the heat on?" And he laughed. He goes, "You think I have control of that? Like, it's an old building."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then the next morning, I'm walking laundry down the street over my shoulder. It was such a drastic change from the life I had, and I felt like if I waited any longer, I probably wouldn't have made the jump to New York. So it was really the perfect time for me.
And did you, because you're clearly a highly ambitious person if you were working like a corporate and then you're also teaching sessions, and during that period of time, did you ever feel like deep down, like, I think there's more for me, I want more? Or is it kind of just this breakup that kind of just like shone a light on like, no, I want so much more? Or was that sort of always there?
There were I wanted more, but then I think I got too comfortable. So,
Mhm.
looking back, I'm thankful to that ex. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you put me in a position to
Exactly.
grow and make a jump to New York. So, it was eye-opening making that change and walking away from stability and kinda tucking your tail between your legs and just starting over.
It's a humbling experience,
Big
but
time.
and did like what were some fears and that came up being in New York, or maybe some blind spots that you were previously had worked in fitness, but coming here, it's a whole nother level. So did you feel like it really illuminated some blind spots or you had as a coach or as a within business?
I have to say actually the opposite.
Mm,
I had such a good mentor in Greenwich, Connecticut that I worked for that just she helped me realize what was important and what wasn't as it related to her training.
yeah.
And I was seeing that rather than 60-minute sessions, she was doing 45-minute sessions. She made me start to realize different stressors people had in their lives and start to paint the whole picture, not just the training session. And then I got into the FRC and Kinstretch world around that time as well. So when I moved to the city and I started at Equinox Columbus Circle, I was the only person with that background.
And what
So
can you go back to? What is the F what were you
FRC is functional range conditioning. So
okay.
it's a mobility system that was created by some practitioners, and it's also transitioned into the fitness industry as well.
Yeah.
And I fortunately just kind of got on that wagon pretty early. And when I came to Equinox Columbus Circle,
Mm.
at one point we had 53 coaches, and I was the only one with that background. So right
Okay.
away, I just looked through a different lens than anyone else did.
Yeah.
And I came in and challenged Equinox's thinking with a lot of different things, including how the trainers manage their business,
Mhm.
and I challenged upper management. The reason why they changed the staff shirts at Equinox as well. And if you remember, there used to be the baby blue shirts.
Oh, I was there when I worked there, I had the black.
Okay, well,
Was that
there
you?
was two
Was that
different
because of
shirts.
you?
There's a shirt that you would wear when you're working the floor, and then there
Mm.
was a shirt you would wear as a service provider, as a trainer or Pilates
Mhm.
instructor. So I, in a ramper meeting, had stood up and expressed my feelings of what happened when I wore a blue shirt, and that people treated me differently, like I was the help. And I remember this
Oh my god,
senior
that's because of you. Yeah, that's
yeah,
great.
this senior manager crucified me in front of everyone, and then my
Mm.
bosses pulled her aside afterwards. They're like, "This guy's actually telling the truth." And it was maybe like 6 weeks, 8 weeks later, the whole company changed shirts.
Wow. So you've always just been sort of somebody who, like, is not afraid to
Oh, I speak
speak your
up.
truth.
Oh, I speak up. Yeah, big time.
And have you always been like that, or is that something where you ever super insecure as a young
Oh,
person?
yeah.
And how
Yeah,
did you
no,
kind of
I've
come to that, like, empowering feeling of being able to, like, be like, "No, I don't wanna be treated
yeah,
like
no,
shit."
that's a great question. To start, I'm the youngest of 3.
Mhm.
My sister's 10 years older than me, my brother's 7 years older than me, so I was very quiet as a kid, and I
Okay.
just kinda sat back and took it all in as a sponge. And, football definitely helped. I would say more specifically, the weight room helped me gain some confidence,
Yeah.
and that would translate to a little bit more success on the football field. So that started
Okay.
some of it. I remember when I got into dancing a little bit more, and I remember being at a prom and kind of letting it rip, and
I love
everyone
that.
got a
Yeah.
reaction out of it. So that certainly helped. But
Mm.
it was a gradual progression, and now I'm at a point where I've started my own business. I've done a bunch of different events. I lost my hair early on. I shaved my head early on, right?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things that uh, shaped how I am today in terms of confidence.
And it seems like you were somebody who was willing to, like, look at those things in like see them for what they are, but also use them in an empowering way instead of letting them kind of hold you back or become a part of your narrative that would not kind of serve you in
Yeah.
terms of moving
And
forward.
not to say that that was all easy.
Of
Like that
course
was
not, but
there's a
yeah.
lot of self-doubt in there and some hard moments, but yeah, I'm so thankful for my whole past for how I am today.
Yeah, and you bring such an amazing energy and like
Thank you.
light to all the people you surround, and everybody says the most wonderful things about you. And even just sitting here, it's like you can
Yeah.
really see that like energy. And I
Thank you.
really love that. And I feel like for a lot of young trainers, and myself included when I was young, it's you're working with people. So it's sometimes so hard to fully be confident in who you are because you're still a child,
Yeah.
you know, and you're working
Yeah.
with people who are like 50. Like, when I first started working, I was like 20 and my clients were like 50 and I'm supposed to be like commanding the room,
Yeah.
but I'm still like I'm so self-conscious and like don't know who I
Yeah,
am.
and don't really know what I'm doing.
Exactly. But yet here I am telling you what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, and then people
So,
are coming to you about injuries and their
exactly.
health and, job advice, financial advice. We didn't know what we were doing, we're just
Yeah.
learning.
You're just like, well, I will figure it out and
Yeah.
then I'll let you know.
Yeah.
And then now you're transitioning out of Motive, but how did you connect in terms with the Motive group and how did that
So
connection
I
happen?
had my eyes on Motive and Why when I was still in Connecticut, and that's
Mhm.
because of the kin stretch world as well as the kettlebell world. And I knew that I just followed Motive on Instagram at the time and really liked what they were doing from a marketing standpoint. I realized that any coach they aligned with had a kettlebell background as well as a mobility
Mhm.
background. So I kind of had it on my horizon that I wanted to work for them when I moved to the city. I didn't think I was qualified when I moved here. Mind you, I was going through a lot when I picked up
Yeah.
shop and just moved to the city, but I had taught a kin stretch workshop at Equinox, posted on Instagram, and one of my now bosses came across that and sent me a message and he said, "What are you doing at Equinox?" And I explored working with them, kind of kept them at arm's distance for about another 6 months. They opened up a pop up shop on
Mhm.
Canal Street in 2019. And I quickly realized that that was essentially a tryout for all the trainers.
Oh, okay.
And I made sure to focus on my music, my playlist, the experience people were having in the space, and filled my classes. And fortunately, was able to parlay that into a full time job. And then COVID hit 3 months later.
Yeah, Jesus. So
That's a
that was
whole other.
2019,
Yeah.
but before we kind of talk about kind of the pandemic
Yeah.
and digital, I like what you said there about really focusing on, like, how the room felt and the music. I kinda wanna go back there and
Yeah.
talk about what you look for in a good group class because obviously, like, you want the instructor to be qualified,
Hmm.
but sometimes I know very qualified instructors, but they're not very warm.
Hmm.
And the way they kind of structure a class makes it slightly maybe intimidating for people.
For sure.
So kind of how do you go through your programming your classes or what do you look for in trainers when you go to a class?
I can remember a specific moment at this facility called Evolution Sports Performance
Mhm.
in 2011 when I was interning. And this facility required that any interns had to have an exercise science or kinesiology background.
Mm,
I didn't have that. Right here, I'm walking in with marketing and dance. But I knew that my communication skills were probably going to be a little stronger than someone else walking in.
mhm.
So fortunately, I hit it off with the head coach at the time, and he and I got along well enough that he's like, I don't care about your background. I think you're a good fit for here. And I remember seeing some of the other interns. They were way more versed than I was in terms of the technicality of things, but I always got picked to lead the workouts. And I remember one day specifically that I had a piece of paper in my pocket and I kept checking it for the dynamic warm up. And the head coach came over and he smacked my shoulder and he's like, "Dude, you're good. You don't need to look at it. Just like trust your gut."
Okay.
And that was a foundational moment for me in terms of to this day how I instruct people. And I had a mentor named Kyle Dobbs while I was at Equinox who one day made me realize that he said there's two different ways people think of their sessions. And he said, I feel like you are more inclined to think about the experience someone's having with you than the actual result. And it was this
Mm,
big aha moment. I'm like, you're right. I actually don't care what someone accomplishes in the session. I just want them to walk out the door being happier than they were walking in. And that comes down to the people skills and being able to read someone and push them and pull back when needed. So when I look at coaches or any type of instructor, my first suggestion is having strong leadership and communication skills. I think that's an important part. And then I'm a little bit sensitive to it, but I think the music's really important. You're curating an experience for someone.
I would 100% agree. I go to classes just because of the music because I
Yeah.
can just, like, in between sets be like, bounce it
Yeah, of
out, be like,
course.
"Yeah, it's a
Yeah, it's
vibe."
important.
And in terms of business, that's, like, number 1. The point is the customer to come back,
Hmm.
and you want them to have a good experience,
For sure.
So that is something that's super important and probably overlooked. And which is interesting because I also come from a dance background, a little different, like classical ballet, but I think sometimes we underestimate our past skills and kind of we might not feel qualified in certain areas, but we
Hmm.
forget that all our experiences that we've had are actually way more relevant than we think, especially if you're a dancer. I feel like we're just so naturally connected to our bodies. So even if you don't know the exact maybe science behind something, you know how to translate that
Hmm.
because you just can feel it because you've done it so many times. So I like that you said that.
There's one other moment I realized that I think it's relevant to share. I was
Mhm.
in a one of my first dance classes in college, and it was all about body language. And I
Mm.
remember in that moment, she went around the room and she said, "No one change your pose, and I'm going to tell you what your pose is telling me." And that's when I started to be a little bit more mindful of someone's body language. That regardless of what's going on in your mind, you can still present yourself as being really confident and being a leader. And
Totally.
that was also partially influenced by my football background because if you made a bad play, you just kept your head up and just you're on to the next one. But yeah, I think that's a huge part of it too. Like even as a young coach, even if you don't know what you're doing, stand there and smile and make eye contact and make people feel happy. It's it's going to take you a long way.
You probably most likely, you know more than those people in the room
Oh
standing
yeah.
there, so you might as well stand tall
Yeah,
because you know what I
exactly.
mean?
Yeah.
That's amazing, and also, having that awareness of body language, you can also read the clients better,
Mhm.
and those clients that you can tell, like, that person probably has never been to a class because their arms are folded,
Mhm.
and they're, like, kind of in the back, so maybe it's you should go up to them and say, "Hello, welcome," and make them
Yeah,
feel at home and, like,
exactly.
bring them forward and make them feel safe in that environment.
Mhm.
So I love that you said that. Okay, let's jump into the pandemic, 2020. I think honestly it was one of the most transformative periods for people in fitness. Like
Yeah.
from a lot of people I've talked to and myself, I think it was one of the most amazing periods. Yes, it was scary and that might be a privileged position for me to come from. I can say not everybody had that experience, but yeah, I found it such a time of growth in a really positive way and having to think critically about the future of fitness and how
Mhm.
we have to really think on our feet
Mhm.
and reach out to others and build community without actually being in person. So, yeah, talk to me a little bit about the era, that
I
era.
remember the day the gym shut down, I think it was St. Patrick's Day.
Okay,
It
yeah.
was a Monday, and we huddled up as a team. Just for some context, Motive and Y as physical therapists, the founders are therapists, then there's a coaching team, and then there's classes as well.
Mhm.
And we decided once we huddled up that let's move 4 classes to Instagram Live,
Okay.
and we'll ask for them to be donation based, contribute however you can. The next day, we were teaching Instagram Live, and we had a kin stretch instructor. I was in the back. We did, I think, 35, 40-minute classes, and donations came in right away. And then that moved to 3 strength classes, 1 kin stretch class every week. We kinda cycle who taught. Fortunately, at the time, we were just filming a new exercise library, so we had all this equipment in the studio.
Okay.
And there was a little bit of a loophole that we were essential business because of physical therapy. So we boarded up the windows, and I just went down every day and would teach Instagram
Mhm.
Live, and definitely got a lot of flack from people online of like, 6 feet, stand away from, the guy in the room with you. But there was a lot of purpose in that, and that's when I realized the power of social media when people from across the world are hopping into my class and then donating, and that's really how we're able to protect our jobs at the time, and it just evolved into, eventually bringing the business back, and once we really opened up, we had at that point attracted new staff members that wanted to come be a part of what we were doing.
And what was your mindset during 2020? Because none of us really knew what was going on. Were you immediately like did you panic at all or were you like more pragmatic and be like, this isn't what's in my control. This is what I'm gonna do. Like, can't this is where to see what happens? Or was there any like fear around that
That's a
time?
good question. So my my parents had supported my interest in fitness early on. So we had a bunch of equipment at home in
Okay.
Connecticut, and my dad my dad sold all of that training equipment 2 weeks before COVID hit.
Oh,
So I knew I didn't want to go home. I wanted to stay in the city,
mhm.
and there was purpose right away. But just to be completely real with you, it was 2 weeks later that my best friend ended his life. So that's really what I was processing all through the pandemic, and that's why Instagram Live became such an outlet for me to
Mm,
provide stability for other people. And looking back, very few people knew what I was going through at that time, but that that was really
yeah.
a hard time for everyone. And again, I was processing that on my own in the city.
Yeah, wow. And also being such like a light for other people. So that's but it's so beautiful in a way that like it's so kind of nice that I guess you had that outlet like you were saying to take your mind off of something and give
Yeah,
back and connect because I feel like that's all we can do when we're going through those times
for
is
sure.
give to others and
Yeah,
there's nothing more empowering
yeah.
than lifting others up
Well,
when
and
you're
I
down.
at that point, I mean, I'd only been in the city for like a year and a half,
Yeah.
and I was living at Columbus Circle. Our studio is down in Nolita, Soho area, and my employer gifted me a bike at the time, so I could bike down every day. So I started to see New York City in a completely different way than I ever have, and
Yeah.
now I'm biking down streets that I'd never been down, and that was part of my grieving process and like kind of
Right.
piecing myself together. But yeah, I can't talk about 2020 and not mention that because that's what was on my mind the whole time.
That's incredible, and going through something like that because we're all human and working with people, you know, can be difficult sometimes when you are nobody knows what's really going behind the
Mhm.
scenes in anybody's life, even our client's life, and how do you kind of do you have any advice for people who might be, they're trying to hold down a business, but something is not going great in their personal lives in terms of, what advice would you give them, or do you have any, thing that you did in particular that are just it's like move through it, can't really do anything?
I just put up a video yesterday about grief and
Mm,
some of my thoughts on it. It's you definitely have to pick up the pieces and move. Like you
yeah.
quickly realize like I remember the next day biking downtown, I'm looking at other people like getting coffee. I'm like, no one knows my best friend just took his life,
Mhm.
and I'm the only one feeling that. And it just forces you to realize life goes on. And Uh, what I would recommend for other people, it's what's worked for me, and this is just how I process emotions, is I need to talk it out. So the day my friend passed, I made about 50 phone calls. On one hand, I wanted everyone to hear it from me, what happened, but on the other hand, I knew that's how I process things. And there are some conversations I had that day that have stuck with me since that really helped me get back up on my feet. So I think it's, if you're working through something, it's important to obviously grieve when needed and when you
Yeah.
feel those waves of emotion. It's really important to talk it through with someone you trust, whether that's professional help or just a close friend. It's obviously really important to have a sounding board. And the other part, it helps if you have a little bit of purpose.
Yeah.
And Instagram Live and the pandemic and all that gave me a lot of purpose through that moment.
Yeah, that's really yeah, it's nice to that you have that perspective and you had that ability to continue on. Like you said, there's not really a choice, but it's really amazing that you can share that and then
Hmm.
share that kind of wisdom with other people. So I kind of want to move into Slim Thick and kind of that's around 2021, right?
Hmm.
And how was that kind of born? What was the kind of impetus behind it?
So I had always joked about the idea of Slim Thick.
Hmm.
It's originally I got it from hip hop culture, and it's really to describe a curvy woman.
Yeah.
And when I worked at Equinox, I used to just joke that I was Slim Thick, and I always realized I stood out very different compared to most fitness people. Like I said it before, but I was going out a lot, eating a lot of pizza, not prepping my meals, and also not stressing about everything else most trainers were. So I knew that my ethos was different than anyone else. And I had always joked about this idea and maybe I'll start a business. And then I was starting to get paid on Venmo on the side from my job. And I remember at one point I was making enough money that I was paying my rent. It's like, okay, maybe you should actually monetize this and turn it into a real business. And I really just sat on that for a long time. And it was once I processed losing my friend that I had the courage to start the business. And that's really why I did it.
And what is the brand? What exactly is Slim Thick? Like, what is the messaging behind it?
So my goal with Slim Thick is to help people feel more comfortable in their bodies. So I'm really teaching confidence.
Uh-huh.
And the way I look at it is I break confidence into three different buckets on how you become more confident or comfortable with who you are. So number one is self-care. And
Yeah.
that's your personal responsibility to take care of yourself and strength train and brush your teeth and all the
Yeah.
above. The second bucket would be personal development. That's the rooms that you put yourself in and the positions you put yourself in. And number three is the community aspect, and that's where we have a responsibility to help the people in your community. And I think that as a group, we can make each other feel more confident from conversations like
Yeah.
this. So what I've done to make money originally is just training clients. I do a lot of that remotely still and in person, and I've been able to then use those funds to pour it into marketing and pour it into apparel and merchandise and events.
And so, is this so somebody is interested in Slim Thick, and how do they find you? Is it like they go to a convention and you're speaking about it, or is it like they talk to you one on one, like personal coaching? What exactly are the
It
resources for it?
originally was one-on-one coaching, and it
Hmm.
still is. Again, that's how I make most of the money right now. Um, there are a lot of events I've been running, and part of that is that as I've had a full-time job with Motive, there's only so much time and energy I could put into building a business. So I realized quickly that events were just big marketing costs, and you get 100 people in a room, those people may buy some t-shirts, may start, sharing your message from word of mouth, follow you online, start tagging you. So I really just started small, and now 4 years removed, I've got some cool events coming up. I've partnered with some psychotherapists as well,
Wow.
and that's
Yeah.
really all been influenced by going through everything with losing my friend. And there's just a bigger purpose with it. And I honestly, I hope to help save people's lives. And I know I'm not there yet, and I'm doing it on a very small scale,
Yeah.
but that's why I'm transitioning out of my full time role so I can really pour into building this.
Wow. That's really Yeah, that was kind of my next question. And what is your process and kind of emotion behind stepping down from Motive? Because, like you said, it was something that you were so interested in at the beginning of your journey.
Hmm.
And now it's kind of, yeah, it's like the evolution. You're evolving into this new person in this new phase. And
Yeah.
it's so cool to see those like things that we've always wanted that we achieve. And then you want something different and it's a different season
Hmm.
of your
Well,
life.
to that point, when I moved to the city, the only goal I had was to work for Motive and Y. I didn't
Yeah.
think past that. I really did not think about life past that. And once I got it, I was so proud of it. And, then we made it through the pandemic, and then I was promoted to director of
Yeah.
coaching and was responsible for building staff and really helping scale the business. And then it was really the life events that happened that pushed me towards creating Slim Thick. And it was definitely tough. It's something that had been on my mind for a while. It's home to me. I've been there for 6.5 years. I live right up the block from it. Every time I walk out the door, my dog pulls towards the gym. My wife works there. I've hired a lot of my staff, a lot of my friends as the staff members. So it's been a great home to me, and it really allowed me to build what I have now.
Yeah.
And one day, I just woke up and realized it was time to step down. And you work up in your head how something's gonna go, and then I communicated clearly with my boss, and he was really supportive. And so I'm just really stepping down from my position. I'll still do some part-time coaching, and I can still use the gym. So they've been really, really supportive of what I'm doing, and I'm fortunate for that support.
That's so amazing. Like I love that. It's amazing to hear people when they reach their goals, they make such an impact. You've made such an impact at Motive, and that being such a big part of like moving to New York
Mhm.
and now kind of transitioning into something new. Like that's super exciting, and I'm
Yeah,
really excited to see where that goes for you. So
thank you.
that's
I
really really
realized
cool.
there was one thing I wanted to add on in there about moving downtown.
Hmm.
So, during the pandemic, when, I'm trying to figure out my life and pick up the pieces with everything, I told myself that after my friend passed, I owed myself at least 12 months in Lower Manhattan just to see what could happen. And I found the apartment that I still have now 5 years later, and I knew that I just needed a space to enter more of a creative headspace and also be available to be productive and go to cool events and all these different things. And that was I had already moved to the city in 2018. I bet on myself, and then in 20 end of 2020, I was like, "All right, you're gonna bet on yourself. You're gonna move downtown." And that that decision to move downtown is, really why I'm in a position that I am now, and that's why I ran into you in the street a few weeks
Exactly.
ago.
That's why we're here now.
Yeah, and I was just walking, doing my commute,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's just if you want to grow, you have to put yourself in a position to do so. And for me, moving downtown was that, and it's been a huge blessing since.
I love that you said that because I was thinking about my friends and I talk about betting on ourselves.
Hmm.
And it takes a while to kind of build that trust that you know you're going to land on your feet regardless of the outcome.
Hmm.
And I feel like it takes a while to get comfortable falling, but getting back up. What kind of how many how long has it taken you to fully feel comfortable doing that? Because for a while I feel like you kind of just fake it till you make it, right? You kind
Yeah,
of
for
just
sure.
falling and falling and be like, let's keep fucking going. Like that's what
Yeah,
I tell myself in my brain. I'm just like, let's
yeah,
go. Like nobody's gonna change us. But after a while, it actually becomes empowering.
for sure.
For a couple of years in my life, it felt like I was like an imposter doing it, but
Hmm.
it gets easier and easier. So, what do you? Is there like a process you go through? Like clearly, you're very in touch with your intuition
Hmm.
because you kind of know when it's time to move.
Yeah.
But how do you sharpen that, and how do you kind of get closer to that feeling of really trusting, or if you have any advice for coaches in sharpening that skill set?
I look at it in two different ways. There's the way you can do that in the fitness world, which was early on in my career,
Mhm.
and putting myself in rooms to network with other coaches that were smarter than me or physical therapists
Yeah.
that could kind of direct me and help me add value to my clients. And I had also done some scary things. I left an employer when I was 22 years old, and it was a mistake. I knew the first day I started at the new job that I screwed up. And I actually went back to my previous employer and told them I screwed up and asked for my job back.
Mm.
So once you do that,
It's like
things
going
aren't as
back to an
scary.
ex.
Yeah.
Take me back.
Yeah, so things weren't as scary after I did that. Moving to
Mhm.
the city was really scary, and I just feel like once you do more scary things, it's not as daunting. And the second part of that is, if you're, at least for me, with trying to break into other industries, everyone should try to run an event, at least one event. There is
Mhm.
nothing like picking a date, picking a venue, and saying, I have to sell 150 tickets by that day. And also putting all your shit out online, like, hey guys, I'm running this event. Hope you
Yeah.
can buy it and attend and support. So I think that's really important. And that's, I've been through scarier things now. So it's not as daunting.
And putting yourself out there online can be so difficult because I
Hmm.
feel like we're our hardest critics. And even sometimes if I'm putting things online, I'm like, oh, I'm so cringy. Like it's so
Hmm.
embarrassing. But I know that I feel like if you're really passionate about your messaging and you feel like there is something, you have something to give, it makes it easier. But it is such a tool and a resource. And I think it holds a lot of trainers back from being successful because they don't utilize
For sure.
Instagram or TikTok or whatever
Yep.
platform as a tool.
Yeah, it's weird because if I were a 21-year-old, I think I'd be focusing on building my brand
Hmm.
rather than building a skill set. So I firmly believe that anyone in the fitness industry needs to go get their reps in and learn by doing and working with people and sharpen your skills there. On the other hand, I watched a lot of other people create opportunities for themselves who I thought I had a better skill set than, but they were putting time and energy into social media and building new opportunities.
Mm.
So there is this line you have to walk, and I felt like for the last couple of years I'm now trying to play catch up
Right.
with social media, and it is tough because you sit back and you watch what you're creating. I'm like, no one's gonna like this, or my outfit's off, or my t-shirt's off on this, or I didn't put captions on it. And the thing is, it's like any other skill. You have to earn your stripes there as well.
Mhm.
And I traditionally I call it I would post and ghost. I would make an Instagram post and then I'd feel good about it and not do anything for 3 weeks. And then you get no engagement.
Mhm.
So January of 2024, I told myself, you're going to post every single day for 365 days straight. And now I'm over 500 days. And on one hand, I've learned a lot. On the other hand, I've kinda hit my ceiling, so it forces me to evolve again.
Right.
But there was a an episode or some podcast I saw where someone who's, in a pretty cool position now with what they do said that they've been posting for 6 years straight, and I was like, "Fuck."
Every single day?
Yeah, I was like, "Fuck, okay,
And
got some catching up
analytics
to do."
wise, like I have a serious question. Is there like a you saw a significant change in terms of following and engagement every single by posting every single day?
No.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Just kidding.
No, my processes got a lot better. I
Mhm.
remember I was just telling someone this earlier. When I first did some voiceover
Yeah.
Instagram posts, it would take me forever to nail the lines, make sure my dog was quiet, the audio was off a little bit, and now my if I have an idea, I can bang it out pretty quickly.
Okay.
But me part of my goal of posting more online was I just wanted people to know all the things I was doing because
Mhm.
I knew that I was pretty unique from a fitness standpoint, but also the positions I was putting myself in outside of fitness. So I just wanted people to start to see my personality.
Yeah.
And then I got really lucky because I attracted a hip hop step community down in North Carolina. And I reached out to them. I got really lucky one day. I commented on a video that was going viral and I said, "Come to New York City. I'll host you at our studio." And they bid on that. And a few months later
I saw
came.
those videos. I was like,
Yeah,
"I wanna
it was so
come."
much
It looks
fun.
so much fun.
So much fun. And it was one of those videos that went viral and that really started it, and then I was like, "Why am I afraid to put my dancing out there?" And that kinda made me more comfortable in that
I love
realm.
your dance videos. They make me
Yeah.
so happy. I'm like, "Okay, get
Thank you.
it."
Well, and the
Yeah.
thing is, like, I'm not thinking like, "Alright, what choreographed routine am I gonna do?" It's literally I'm working out and I'm just, the camera's
Vibing.
still running.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
But I think that's what does well, I'm learning. I think also this generation is like everything is so perfect that
Mhm.
we are starved for authenticity. And I know that's such a buzzword, but it just bringing a sense of personality and like not taking life so seriously because in the end, like
Yeah.
life is finite, not in like a morbid way, but like why not enjoy yourself?
Yeah.
And people should feel comfortable just vibing between sets. I do it in the
Seriously.
gym
Yeah.
and people look at me like I'm insane, but I'm like, I am having the time of my life.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, I wish
it's
more people would do that.
yeah, and I go out and I'm smiling,
Yeah.
like, because not because of the squat, because of my, like,
The
dance
vibes are
session.
high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And speak kind of talking into business, you're an advisor for Samble.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit more about what Samble is?
Yeah, so fortunately, I met the Ensemble team through an outdoor kettlebell community. In
Mm,
20 summer of 2021, I taught a couple classes in Midtown and met the 2 founders and, pretty quickly identified this as an opportunity
mhm,
and, had some great conversations with them and was able to negotiate, an advisory, role with them, and they've really influenced how I think and how I operate in terms of a as a businessman now, and not just from a fitness standpoint.
mhm.
It's tapping into other markets and being able to think about funding and so many different things, running events.
Yeah,
So early on, Samble was really created to help online uh, group fitness instructors in the pandemic to scale, and it has now shifted a little bit more towards supporting one-on-one coaches, regardless of if they're a strength coach or a Pilates
right.
instructor, but it's turned into a really cool community, and, fortunately, a lot of my friends and coaches in my network joined the platform and I've seen success with it.
And what is the specific mission or ethos behind Samble?
It's, again, really to help people scale. It's to
It's
help.
specifically for business.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's helping coaches and creators build a brand and scale their business and being able to have a one-stop shop for your paywall. So your
Mhm.
exercise library, your monthly programs, your in-person sessions,
And
your
do they
Zoom
take
sessions.
care of things like taxes or is that something separate?
No, that's that's
Okay,
on
no,
the creator. Yeah.
that's called an accountant,
Yeah.
Laura. Sorry.
No, I'll go, but they give you the framework
Okay.
to think bigger with your business.
But I
And
I like that though because I feel like it can be very overwhelming because you need like 700 channels and to like put it all in one place is just so nice.
yes.
It creates a system and all the trainer has to worry about is being a good trainer and just
Yes.
creating the content.
Yeah. And early on, I worked a lot closer with the founding
Mhm.
team. Now I really just use Samble to help support my business. But funny enough, I've helped them with a lot of their events.
Mhm.
And this past event that you were part of on Saturday, they weren't going to have a workout component, and I knew that there were reformers there. So
Yeah.
that's why I reached out to Katie and then eventually turned on to you. So I'm glad you got to be a part of that as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was such a fun event. Everybody was there was such good energy and so kind. And it's like so fun going to fitness events with other regardless if they're trainers, just people who are really interested in the same things. And it goes back
Hmm.
to that sense of community. It's
Hmm.
just like and I met a couple of really cool people there and I think I might interview
Oh,
Dominic
you
for the
should.
yeah,
Yeah,
because I
as
was
you
like,
should.
why not?
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of touched on Katie, and we both know Katie. Katie
Yes.
is really good friend of mine, my mentor and studio owner of Paradigm Studio on the Upper East Side. But you also work with Katie.
Yes.
And how have you guys how has she kind of impacted you?
So Katie came to one of my kettlebell classes and then quickly expressed interest in training with me. And just based on our availability, we only could do it remote. And it's now been 3 years of training once or twice a week. And she's really just been so supportive of me and honestly some of my transitions behind the scenes. She's been a good sounding board for me as well. But I just really appreciate her openness to being coached.
Mhm.
And like, here's the thing: when you zoom out as a personal trainer or coach, or maybe even a Pilates instructor, the exercises are the same from person to person,
Mhm.
right? But it's really like the dosage of those exercises, and then it's everything in between, from your people skills and how you communicate with someone, and can you add value outside of those 3 sets of split squats. And I've just grown a lot with her, and she trusted me with her pregnancy, and then building her back up since then. So she's been an awesome friend, and I love anytime she shares anything about me, because I get like 50 to 100 Pilates instructors follow me, and I've kind of trickled into working with a lot of Pilates instructors now,
Which
which has
is
been
so
cool.
important because strength training,
Yeah,
Pilates instructor needs to do that.
yeah.
And I love that you said that about I think I think a lot yeah, like I did maybe you said this earlier, but or I'm just thinking about that, but there's like it's not really a competition, like, there's enough for everybody, and I
Hmm.
think having that mindset of sharing resources and sharing your platform with other people
Hmm.
and supporting each other goes further than, like, just being qualified, because
For
that's
sure.
really like you said, that's putting yourself in rooms with people who are better than you. If I
Hmm.
hadn't met Katie, because I was working at Equinox at the time and kind of started working with her because I was looking for a mentor at that time, but, yeah, she really, like, inspired me to go out and bet on myself and completely work for myself and trust that I will fall on my feet, and she really inspired me to, yeah, think that there could be more in fitness than just, like you were saying, just being a fitness instructor. Nothing wrong with that, but I think to actually scale something and to build something of longevity in this industry, you have to be a little bit more
Yeah.
forward
And
thinking.
it means a lot when someone believes in you, and that's
Yeah.
what she's done. So shout out to Katie.
Shout out to Katie. But I also liked what you said about being coachable. And I noticed that with people. I think regardless if it's a client or you have your own mentor or you're a mentee, the
Hmm.
ability for you to be coachable or
Hmm.
for who you're working with to be coachable changes everything in whatever you're getting out of that session, regardless if it be business, relationship, or even physical. Have you gone through a period where you didn't feel like you were super coachable, or have you always been a pretty coachable person because of like your
I've
background?
I've been pretty coachable. I think it's more so the delivery of how
Mhm.
someone coaches you, or maybe the context and the setting of it. But I was definitely dogmatic in my approach early on, thinking like you have to go this route
Yeah.
and you have to swing a kettlebell this way, and I'm not gonna have this person run or something like that, right? So that's evolved, and that's reflective of me getting more comfortable in my skin and exposing myself to different modalities. And I think that kind of even ties back into the conversation with Katie, is knowing that in Pilates there's not a lot of people that strength train, like you
Mhm.
said. So knowing like it's not one size fits all, and it's great if someone's really deconditioned, getting them to do 2 days of activity of anything is
Yeah.
going to help them. But there's loopholes to each one, and there's like things that can support your systems that you're already doing by just squatting a couple times a week, right? So I think it's important to just, for my mission really is, I just want people to move, and I want people to move well, and a couple times a week. And however you do that, I'm cool with it. And it's made me realize, like, really there's no need to judge on someone with how they work out. It's just like, let's support each other and empower each other to keep taking care of our bodies.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people just sit back and be like, I don't do mobility training or I don't do this. I only work with barbells. Like, okay, well, you just crossed off a lot of people you could work with. you know?
Yeah, you cross your it's just being closed-minded will, like, shut you down from a lot
Yeah.
more than just fitness. It's gonna shut you down from just, like,
Yeah.
opportunities in terms of
For
life.
sure. I
Um,
think a lot of I've heard so many people saying like you need to really work on your niche and just work to that community. And I'm kind of the opposite. I actually want to be really broad because
yeah,
I've always prided myself on that I'm going to find some commonality with the person I'm sitting across from and find a way to add value to them. If someone is training for the Olympics or a powerlifting meet, I'm not your guy. And I'll be the first one to tell you that and I'll direct you to who you need to go to. But it's just it's really important to be able to communicate well with people and know like we're all going through life through our own lens and
mhm.
we've all been shaped by different experiences and like let's just support each other a little bit with that.
I like that approach to it because yeah, I guess it's, like, also when you're in fitness and you kind of get to a point where you can decide. You can be like, "Yeah, I can be a jack of all trades kind of person," or if being really focused in a niche is something that's really interesting to you. Somebody like Katie, I feel like she's a powerhouse in business, but I think she's really focused on the niche of Pilates, and
Hmm.
really, really respect her for that, and there's something so amazing about that. But, yeah, that might not necessarily be for somebody else, so
Hmm.
I think it's also important that you kind of understand what you want out of an industry and that having a lot of skills is an amazing asset, and also being having a niche is also an amazing asset.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think marketing that, to your point, is really important, being able to best present that to the world in a way that gets attention of people is important, and knowing how
Hmm.
to do that. And kind of closing out, what, do you have any, like, advice or kind of thoughts if you're kind of looking back at your evolution as a person and you're kind of, like, talking to your younger self, do you feel like you would say anything to sort of, like, ease any anxiety, or would you have done anything differently, or no?
I do think about this pretty regularly and I
Yeah.
don't think I would change anything,
Mhm.
honestly. If I could go back and tell myself anything, I'd say like you're on the right path, keep doing what you're doing.
And what would
And
you tell your future self now? I feel like that's
ooh,
fun.
yeah, I never thought about that. Oh, I have to think about that. Well,
You
what
can
would I
have a
tell my
moment.
future self? Yeah, I gotta brainstorm a little bit.
Now I'm like, I don't know what I would
Yeah,
tell
I
her.
know. I may have to come back to that. Um, for my future self, I have this saying with one of my close friends from college. See you at the top. And we just picture like being 50 something and sitting in these chairs and kind of looking over like what we've accomplished. So that's kind of what I'm going to say to my future self. I'll see you at the top.
Wait, I love that. I feel like that's a perfect thing to close out
Yeah.
on. I think we can all see Michael at the top because he's a pretty fucking impressive
Yeah.
person.
Thank you. Of
But thank you so much for making time today. It was really
course.
lovely speaking to you, and, I can't wait for everybody to hear this conversation.
Yeah. Thank you again, Laura.